Okay, yep, recording on my end.
Hey there, this is Daniel Fava from privatepracticeelevation.com.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome again to the Practice of Therapy podcast. And if you're listening to the podcast for the first time, this is part two. So I invite you to go back and listen to the previous episode. But I've got my friend Daniel Fava from Private Practice Elevation here, and we're going to be talking about the website redesign that I'm have started and getting Daniel's help with. And we're going to be just kind of walking through some of the nuts and bolts and kind of geek out in this episode a little bit about some of the back end stuff. And so hopefully you'll find this helpful in just thinking about your own website and the importance of that. One thing I would want to say here at the beginning, and Daniel, please chime in on this as well. Um, the importance of having a website is just, I can't emphasize that enough. And as we said in the previous episode, it's really more important than your building and your office location in terms of bringing in new clients. You want to say more about that, Daniel?
I mean, I would just completely agree. I know I'm I'm a little bit biased because I'm have a web design agency, but yeah, it's really the front. It's the face of your business. It's the face of your brand, and it's often the first interaction that someone's going to have with your private practice because they're going to head online, unless they get a really specific referral from a great friend. Even with that, someone's going to get your name and they're going to go Google you, or they're going to go online and try to find your website and start looking for those reasons to connect with you. And start understanding the services that you have, how to get started, what the process looks like, all that stuff. You've got all different people in all different places with all different personalities and challenges, and you want to make sure that your website is there and it's capturing all those different people that are looking to solve challenges in their own lives.
Right, right. And I know from my own practice, I would say well over 90% of the referrals we get is because people have found us online.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so that's just
That's awesome.
such an important piece. So,
Yeah.
so thinking about a website redesign, I know in the last episode we talked about some of the why around that, at least for me. And a big part of it was, and you helped me in this review of this, Daniel, is I'm going to be adding more clinicians this next year.
Yep.
Really also focusing on having much more of a telehealth focus
Yep.
as opposed to a brick and mortar focus.
Yeah.
And that's going to give me kind of access to the whole state of Tennessee where I'm located. Um, the other part of it is that my website was just is older. Um, I haven't really changed the look of it in over 5 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's time for a facelift.
Yep.
And the other part is just making it easier for potential clients to navigate. I realize that the navigation part of my website is a little bit clunky at this point.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, sounds like you nailed it. And I will say that you're the type of client that I would love to work with, because you're telling us that you're getting like 90% of your referrals, from the website. So the website's already working in some sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the times, and what we see when we work on projects like this, it's amazing because you've got a website that's been there for 5 years. It's kind of working, but
Mm-hmm.
there's all these little things that we can do that are going to make it look better on mobile devices, and it's going to convert better because we can focus on conversions and making sure that your contact information is in the right place. And also, just like you said, that facelift can
Mm-hmm.
often make you look more professional, so that could help
Mm-hmm.
increase conversion. So like you are poised in a great place, Gordon, to increase your conversions. And I'm excited to see what happens after you launch the new website.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So where do we start?
Yeah, so with this, let's get into a little bit of some of the nitty gritty stuff and probably some questions that people might be having before they really get started to actually uh, start doing this in their own practice. And one of the first questions that I always receive is, what's going to happen to my current website while you're building the new website?
Mm-hmm.
So we can talk a little bit about that. And I know that you're kind of going through this process right now, Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
And really, uh, the good news is your current website can stay up and stay live where it is. We obviously don't want to take it down while you're working on this new project, because maybe that new project is going to take you about 6 weeks to complete. If you're DIYing it, maybe even longer, depending on how much time you have, to devote to it. So obviously we want to keep business coming in. We want to make sure that your website is still there. So what we do at Private Practice Elevation, it really depends on what platform they're already on. So if a website is on WordPress, we can actually make a duplication of the current site. This way, if they have some pages and a structure that we kind of are going to start with, lots of blog posts, a lot of times they'll have blog posts,
Mm-hmm.
images with each of those blog posts. It's easier to just duplicate the website and migrate that website to our own hosting server, which will be our staging server, where we're going to work on the website. We're going to build it there. Make sure that in WordPress that it's checked that search engines can't find the website, and a lot of the times we'll also password protect the that new website, because we don't want people finding it. We don't want Google finding it. So usually,
Mm-hmm.
if you do those two things, no one's going to see it, because no one's going to have the link, because it'll probably be some weird temporary URL that it's going to be at. So people aren't going to find that. But this gives you a place where you can just kind of have a sandbox where you can start playing around with stuff. Sometimes too, I know with WordPress, a lot of people, they get a little bit plugin crazy and they just like start adding tons and tons of stuff, and the
Mm-hmm.
website starts to get slow and stuff like that. So sometimes duplicating the website might not be the best option, because it's gotten so um, just too much stuff. There's just too many pieces, and it's kind of like trying to take a 1980 Honda Accord or whatever. I don't even know if they made Accords back then, but you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean. Taking an old
Uh-huh.
car and trying to like keep making it better and better. At some point you just want to start fresh. So
Right.
if
Right.
that's the case, and like I said, if you're on WordPress too, WordPress allows you to export your content. So you can export the pages and the blog posts and all of your images, and
Mm-hmm.
then import that into a fresh WordPress installation and start from there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll
Yeah.
pause here. Do you have any questions on? I know I just
Yeah.
kind of rambled
Yeah.
there.
And I guess that again, as we kind of talked about in the last episode, as we're talking about this, for anyone that this sounds just really intimidating,
Yeah.
the stuff that Daniel was talking about, I would say you definitely want to probably outsource that. Um, it's when I started my website, I actually started it. It's more than 5 years ago. It's probably been 10 years now since I
Wow.
started the website. So just organically, it's got a lot of traffic
Yeah.
just because it's been up there so long.
Yep.
Um, but to to I had to teach myself about WordPress when I started that website, and so to be able to kind of understand how websites work on the back end, again, it was something that I kind of taught myself. But even now, as Daniel is saying this, I'm thinking, okay, this is a lot more steps than I necessarily want to do myself.
Right.
So I think it's really important to think about when you outsource and really think about the return on the investment of things. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And even, we do this stuff all the time, and stuff does happen when you're duplicating a website, because
Mm-hmm.
you got different hosting environments and PHP languages, like all this stuff that's even beyond, what I really know about too. So,
Mm-hmm.
stuff can come up and things, might not work right. So it's definitely great. If you can, I always encourage investing,
Right.
because it's going to save you time. It's going to save you headaches. Like no one wants to be on Google wondering, trying to figure out why something isn't working, or then you have to
Yeah.
be on support chat, that sort of stuff.
Right.
There are plugins for people who are like, still feeling like, yeah, I can totally do this. So
Mm-hmm.
there's WordPress plugins, like the duplicator plugin is one that you can do, and you just kind of follow through their steps. But yeah, it can get super complicated.
Right, right. And what Daniel's talking about, to kind of clarify, is that when you go to the redesign and talking about, drastic redesign, it's almost like you take the ship that's been in the ocean and you make a clone of it, and then you dry dock the clone and you redo the clone in the dry dock. And then
Right.
as soon as it's ready to relaunch, you take the old ship out of the water, put the new one in, and we're
Yep.
good to go. Yeah.
Right. Yep. In its
Yeah.
place. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it does start to get a little complicated too when it comes to the design part of it. Because many people, we're still talking about WordPress here, and many people think, oh, I can just get a new theme and just turn that on, and it's just going to look fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But that's usually not the case, especially if your website is pretty old. It could be that you're using a theme that, I mean, each WordPress theme has a different way of
Mm-hmm.
showing your content, displaying images and headers and stuff like that. So a lot of the times, if you just decide, oh, I'm going to use, I know we've talked about like Divi is
Mm-hmm.
the theme that we like to use with all of our custom design clients. So you migrate the website over, and then you install the Divi theme on WordPress, and then you turn it on, and then you look at your pages, and you'll see probably all this. It's called short code, but you'll see all like these numbers and letters and brackets and things, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I thought if I just turned on this new theme, it's going to look great. So there is still plenty of work to do
Right.
when you're redesigning the website, and it has to be done page by page, and that's where it can really be a time suck for many people.
Right. Yeah. So for folks that are listening, you want to talk a little bit about, I know a lot of folks, if they kind of DIY, they might have used something like Squarespace or Wix as opposed to WordPress. You want to kind of make the distinction there about that and why maybe WordPress is something that they might want to consider, and even got maybe a little more detail about what is a theme.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I think those are kind of basic kinds of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with the theme question. So a theme is, um, it's kind of a package of software that really uh, will improve or change the look of the website. So WordPress is like, the analogy I like to use is when you're building a house. So WordPress is really like the foundation and the wood studs and the roof and all the stuff that kind of holds the house together. And then the theme would be like the siding and the paint and all the different ways that you can make that house look beautiful. So different
Mhm.
themes give you different ways of displaying your content. Maybe they give you sliders for your posts, your blog posts, so you
Mhm.
can kind of display them in a cool way. And each one just has a different way of customizing the website with colors, fonts, all that
Mhm.
stuff, different functionality and stuff like that.
Right.
um, and when it comes to, you have the same sort of thing happening when you're using Squarespace as well, where you can choose a theme and how you want it to look. And that's really that has to do a lot with like your brand and the feeling you want to have for your private practice website. The difference between WordPress and something like Squarespace is built for more of the DIY person who's going to spend time and do that stuff themselves. They, try to make it really straightforward and drag and drop and all that sort of stuff, so you can do that stuff. The reason why we use WordPress is really for future proofing websites, because the WordPress community, the people who are using WordPress, I forget what the percentage is for how many websites out there are using WordPress, but it's the vast majority of websites and some of the biggest websites it's millions and millions of websites are using WordPress, millions of businesses
Mhm.
using WordPress. And so you've got a lot of people and a lot of support who are pouring into WordPress to make it better and better and better, and use best practices for SEO and for code and for speed and all that sort of stuff. So once the website is completed, or even before it's completed, you can find somebody who knows how to use WordPress well. You can always build onto a WordPress website if in the future you're like, you know what, I really want to have an e-commerce functionality on my website. I want to add that on.
Mhm.
I think that might be something that Squarespace has too. I'm not super familiar with Squarespace, but that's something you can do in WordPress, and you can do it. You can customize it to your heart's content because you're free to take the code and the plugins and make it work how you want it to work and make it look how you want it to look.
Right.
So it's just kind of it's kind of the difference between that DIY mentality versus an investment into your business and the future of your
Mhm.
business, and using something that the best, most popular websites are using.
Right, right. Yeah. And it's yeah, and the versatility of WordPress is just limitless.
Hmm.
Um, you can make it look your website look however you want to using WordPress.
Right.
And
Yep.
yeah, and then the other term that we people hear thrown around are plugins. You want to talk a little bit about plugins and what those are?
Yeah, yeah. So you've got the WordPress software, like we talked, as the framework. The theme makes it look pretty. Plugins add different functionality to WordPress itself. So, for an example, we always use an SEO plugin called Yoast SEO on all the websites that we create. So, what that is, it's a little piece of software that you download, and it's free, and you add it onto the website, and then suddenly on each page and each blog post, we're able to specify which keyword we want this page to rank for. And then the plugin is going to look through all the content, and it's going to tell us all the different things that we can do to optimize that page for that specific keyword. And it'll guide us through some things, and we could edit the title of the page and write the meta description for the page. So it's given us extra functionality that wasn't there in out of the box WordPress, that sort of thing.
Right. Yeah. So, okay. So to me, it seems like, okay, with the redesign, you've got to think about all the back end stuff and, the practicality of how do you do that while you keep your current website up. So
Right.
when it comes to the actual design, um, the look, how do you walk people through that process? Because it's kind of like I can imagine, it's kind of like when you go into to paint a room, you can go to the paint store and get a whole book of paint chips that have different colors and
Right.
all that sort of thing. And so I
Yeah.
think about, yeah, that's one of the things that I think about is most intimidating to me
Yeah.
is just thinking about that part
Yeah,
of
I
it.
mean that could be a whole other podcast
Yeah,
conversation right there. That could be a
yeah,
webinar, like that's like
yeah,
web
yeah,
design 101.
yeah.
And if we're talking to someone who's DIYing it and they're wanting to make their website look better, but they don't have a sense of design, which happens a lot. I see a lot of websites, and it's
Hmm.
like, oh, I've had this website for 4 years or 5 years, and so they've started throwing everything into the homepage, and there's just a million things to look at.
Hmm.
So that can certainly happen. We don't want that to happen. For me as a web designer, like I am extremely passionate about clean design, like not overwhelming the user and making sure that someone can get to what they're looking for, the information that they're looking for, as quickly as possible. And
Hmm.
really thinking about your ideal client and the state that they're in. Are they going to be overwhelmed or have some anxiety? So you want to make it just really just soft and inviting and that sort of thing. Like really getting into the mind of your ideal clients is going to help you at least not just design your website sort of in a void, but really make sure that you're designing this website for those ideal clients that you want to attract.
Hmm.
And when it comes to colors and fonts and stuff like that, the best thing you can do is just collect inspiration, like start a Pinterest board or just save a bunch of links of websites that you really like, and start looking at those websites and actually deciding, like, why am I drawn to this? Why do I like this? Does
Mm-hmm.
this have the feeling that I want for my potential clients to have when they land on my website? And that can help you make some decisions if you're trying to lay out a page with a new theme, trying to make sure that it stays clean and has that same essence and same feeling of the websites that you love. And
Right.
another sort of secret, not so secret trick, if you're using the Divi theme, which is, I just love Divi, and I'm releasing a podcast soon that's all about why I love Divi. But they actually have pre-made page layouts within the theme, so you can go and create a new page, and they give you a number of pre-designed websites. They've got designs there for um, restaurants and authors and just different types of businesses and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can load up within seconds, you can load up a nice layout that you think has that sort of feeling, like I said before, that essence, and then you can start putting in your content and switching it out if you don't want
Mm-hmm.
to, or you don't know how to make those design decisions, but you want something that's laid out nicely. You can use those pre-made layouts, and I know a lot of themes have that nowadays.
Right, right. Well, I know where I want to be mindful of your time, Daniel, and this, but I think one of the things that I think about when going to a website, and I've tried to do this even with my old website, is so that people, when somebody goes to a website, they need to know what to do.
Yeah.
uh, and there's, a call to action or whatever.
Yeah.
And, I think one of the mistakes that I think a lot of people do is in just working with other therapists, when I look at their websites, they make it really hard for people to contact them. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, in terms of, you don't want to have to scroll down the page to find a phone number or a contact form or any of that sort of thing. It needs to be
Yeah.
front and
Hmm.
center, because I think a lot of times when people make the decision to go to therapy or to start seeing a counselor, um, you don't want to make them have to work for that,
Yeah.
because, yeah,
Hmm.
of getting
Absolutely.
there. So, yeah. And so, any other little design tips with that, in
Yeah.
terms of,
Yeah. I'd say, to that point, really the two most important things that people need to know is what you do and how to get started. So
mhm,
making sure that your website is like completely clear on those points, and especially copywriting can be tricky. I highly recommend Donald Miller's Building a Story Brand book,
right.
because that really helps break it down to understand how do I speak to my ideal clients, and I'll give you some great exercises to write that
Hmm.
copy. But really, the essence of that book is just don't be don't be poetic and fluffy. Like, just be very straight to the point of,
Right.
this is what I do, this is how to get started. And a lot of the times when we're very straight to the point, that helps with SEO too, because you can say couples counseling in Atlanta, and that's the title of the page. You don't have to try to come up with something fancy or fluffy,
Hmm.
like making relationships beautiful. Like, someone's probably not Googling for that. Somebody might be Googling couples counseling or marriage counseling in Atlanta, so be very direct with that. But
Yeah.
do agree on, making it really simple for somebody to take that next step, because a lot of the times, I think there's often about, I think last I read on the statistics is about seven to nine times a client will visit your website or interact in some way with your brand when they're researching and trying to figure out who they're going to go with. So those first couple of times they might be looking for understanding what you do, but then those other times when they're ready to go and contact you, you want to give them multiple ways of getting to that contact page or getting to your phone number and having it right
Right.
there.
Yeah. 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 And that's that, I think, as you've already said, just simple is better, I think, when it comes to website design.
Yeah.
And again, that's as we talked about in the previous episode, is mine. my website, I realize my current website is just too many buttons and things on it, and I think
Yeah.
that's just overwhelming for people. So yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. I do want to touch on one more thing,
yeah,
and
sure.
it's all good. I still have some more time here. So, I know we didn't talk a lot about SEO, but I know you mentioned
Mm-hmm,
before that you have a lot of pages, and, your website's been established. So you're getting traffic that's been around.
mm-hmm,
And some people wonder, oh, how do I make sure that I, keep those SEO rankings, with the new website? And so if your domain is staying the same, then you're going to want to make sure that the URLs are not changing, because Google has already ranked those pages and it understands where that content lives. And so if you start changing URLs, things might get a little askew.
mm-hmm,
They'll probably
mm-hmm.
bounce back after a few months, but if you're trying to really avoid that, like a mega dip in traffic, try to keep the URLs the same. If you do need to change the URL, and sometimes that makes sense to actually improve the SEO ranking, because maybe
Mm-hmm.
you don't have the keyword in the URL, so you want to change that. You want to make sure, we're going to get a little geeky here. That's where you set up what's called 301 redirects, which basically just lets Google know that this content is still here, but it's now at this new location. So,
Right.
um,
Uh-huh.
so there are certain plugins that you can use to set that stuff up,
Yeah.
but you want to make sure that Google, if it still is seeing your content, you don't want people clicking on that and then getting a 404 page. You want them to actually go to the same content, and Google's robots going there too.
Yeah, yeah, that's got great advice. Great advice. Well, Daniel, tell again. I appreciate so much you spending the time to do these back-to-back episodes
Yeah,
with
it's
me.
fun.
But yeah, it's great stuff. Tell folks how they can get in touch with you, and if they have more questions about just this whole process of website redesign and that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. You can just go to privatepracticeelevation.com, and that's where you'll find our services. If you're ready to start, you can just click on there's a button in the top right there, and I'd love to get in touch and chat with you. Or if you've got any specific questions, just email me at daniel@privatepracticeelevation.com.
Awesome. Awesome. And we'll have all these things, these links and things in the show notes and show summary. So thanks, Daniel.
Thanks
I'm
so
sure
much.
we'll be talking again.
Yep.